Hi guys, good morning. This is Kiran. Last time we were seeing about uh, AWS S3 and the classes in S3. So today we are going to see what is S3 lifecycle management and the basics of versioning. The simple concept of lifecycle management is just portrayed in the picture that you are seeing. Shilpa, can you able to hear me? Just reply me in chat. Okay. So as in the picture, AWS S3 lifecycle policy. What is that lifecycle policy? As the name indicates, the object's lifecycle is determined, and the object's lifecycle is made to a policy, and it is deployed in S3 bucket. So the main things of lifecycle policy is transition objects to another storage class. As I said, we have three storage classes. So S3 and S3 a standard one, S3 infrequently accessed, and a glacier archive. So how to move these objects using this lifecycle policy, using the lifecycle management inside S3 is what we are going to see today. So we can able to archive objects or delete them, or we can move to infrequently accessed S3 after a specific period of time. So that is the main thing of life cycle policy management. So this picture says that S3 bucket with objects. It shows a bucket which has some objects, some stored data or something like that. And the life cycle policies are applied to that. What is the calendar icon here shows is the life cycle policy is applied for 30 days, and automatically after 30 days it is moved or automatically cleaned and it is kept in Amazon Glacier. And in Amazon Glacier we can do versioning, and if we want we can keep those data for some days, and we can, if we don't want it, we can move to the recycle bin or we can delete it. So that is the thing that is shown here. This is a clear-cut picture that shows what is going to happen inside a life cycle policy management structure. Okay, we'll start with basics of S3. I need to refresh you what is S3. What is S3 in AWS? As we saw in the last class, object storage built to store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere. Why I am giving you the same slide what I've given you in the last week is the first slide is the same slide, because we are going to see what is lifecycle management and the basics of versioning in S3. So before that, we need to refresh what is S3. So S3 is object-oriented storage built to store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere, even from websites and mobile applications or corporate applications, and data from IoT sensors or devices. It is designed to deliver 99.99% of durability. So this is what S3, as we have seen in last week, it is an object-oriented storage built to store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere. So this storage, in this storage, we are going to enable a life cycle for the objects that are stored in this storage, and we can deploy some policies for those life cycle to manage those objects. We are going into life cycle management. So S3 provides, what are the advantages is S3 provides comprehensive security compliance capabilities that meet even more stringent regulatory requirements. It gives customers flexibility in the way they manage for cost optimization, access control, and compliance. So S3 provides query in place functionality, allowing you to run powerful analytics directly on your data at rest in S3. As I said, you can run a powerful query in place functionality, in the sense is nothing that on applications like as big data applications like as Informatica, Cassandra can fetch data from directly from S3 using a query. So that is what they are saying, query in place functionality, allowing you to run powerful analytics directly on your data, even if the data is at rest in S3. So these are some of the advantages of S3. and we'll go to what is life cycle management in S3. So we have life cycle management and versioning. As I said in the previous slide, life cycle management and versioning. Versioning is a different one, and life cycle management is a different one. So today we are going to concentrate more on life cycle management and not on versioning. And versioning, I'll be going to give you a small example and the basics criteria of what is versioning and how it is used in S3. And in the next classes, we are going to see what is versioning and how versioning works and what are the advantages of versioning, uh, and the used cases where the versioning is used. All those things we are going to see in the next class. So we are going to see what is lifecycle management. Lifecycle configuration or lifecycle management enables you to specify the lifecycle management lifecycle of objects in a bucket. So enables you to specify the life cycle. The life cycle, what is the meaning of life cycle is, if you are sowing a seed inside a pot. So the seeds, then you're watering the seed. Then the seed grows into a plant, then the plant grows into giving flowers and fruits. So that is the life cycle of a plant. And the same thing, if you are seeing about the objects that are being stored in S3, each objects can be given a life cycle. Objects are lifeless, but we can give a life cycle for that objects to manage those objects. The configuration is to set of one or more rules. As I said, one or more policies or one or more rules, which where each rule defines an action for Amazon S3 to apply to a group of objects or a single object. So a configuration is set, or the configuration or the policy or the management is set with one or more rules. So rules is nothing but a set of standard criteria to be followed once the objects or the stored files inside the S3. So where each rule defines an action, where each rule is, if I am giving you a rule, you have to follow this, you have to follow this, and you have to follow this. So if you follow all these rules, then you will reach the goal. So that are the rules where each and every object is following those rules inside Amazon S3. So so that it is easy for us to manage those objects inside the S3. So these actions can be classified as follows. So transition objects and expiration objects. So what is a transition object and what is an expiration object? Expiration of actions. Transition actions and expiration actions. So in which you define when object transition to another storage class. What is this object transition to another storage classes? As I said, we have three storage classes. One is S3 standard, that is standard access, and S3 infrequent access, and the third one is glacier. So if you define a policy and the objects inside the S3, in S3, objects that are stored in S3 gets transitioned to another storage class. So that's what they are explaining it here. So transition of objects from one storage class to another storage class is the actions by any actions performed using the policy or the lifecycle management policy is known as transition actions. So these actions are performed only if the policy is applied to the S3. Only the policy is applied in S3. So that's what they are saying here. So you may choose, for example, you may choose to transition object to standard IA. That's what I have said. Standard S3 or standard infrequently accessed. IA is infrequently accessed storage class for 30 days after creation, or archive objects to the storage glacier class for 1 year after creation. So if you are creating an object, today you are creating an object in S3. So for example, I'm saying this. Today you are creating an object in S3, and you are keeping those objects in Amazon S3. So at the very first is the Amazon S3 stores and keeps that object as standard in standard policy in standard S3. So that's what they are saying. So once an object becomes eligible for transformation or expiration, you can see the delay. So For example, you may choose a transition object to standard SC. You can choose it if the object want to be kept in standard or the standard access or infrequently accessed S3. So if we are storing that data in standard IA, the storage class, after 30 days, the data will be moved to infrequently accessed. We can set like that policies. Or after 30 days, this data will be moved to Glacier storage class where it is archived. As I said, Glacier is an archive storage class where you can keep those data for longer duration of time. That's what they are saying here. In the Glacier storage class, you can keep the data 1 year after creation. So the data will be archived into the Glacier storage class 1 year after creation. So expiration action is nothing but the deleting action. So in which you specify when the objects expire or when the objects can be deleted. Then Amazon instant deletes the expired objects on behalf of you. So everything is happening automatically. So even in transition, it is once the policy is set, it is happening automatically, and expiration is also happening automatically. So it does not need any human intervention. So that we want to change the storage class or something like that, we cannot do that, because once the policy is set, the objects will kept under following a set of rules. So after setting the policy, the object will follow the rule and it will take the transition from one storage class to another storage class. So when should I use lifecycle configuration for objects? So this here, it shows and it gives you an idea when it should be used, and it will give an example of where and when and how it can be used. So lifecycle configuration for objects. Hello Shilpa, make me a presenter please. Shilpa, are you there? Okay. Can you see my screen? So that was the transition classes in which you define when the object is. Shilpa, can you able to hear me? Just reply. Okay. Sorry guys. Sorry for the interruption. Uh, my network is having some issues, so it's not able to share the screen. So this is the lifecycle management in which you define when objects transition to another storage class. For example, you may choose to transition objects to standard infrequently access or standard access or to glacier. So the expiration action, as I said, in which you specify when the object expires. Amazon S3 deletes the expired objects on behalf of you, and you need not to take any human intervention to delete those objects. So that's what they have mentioned here. And the next slide is, when should I use lifecycle? You can define lifecycle configuration rules for objects that have a well-defined lifecycle. For example, if you're uploading a periodic logs to your bucket, your application might need these logs for a week or a month or after creation, and after that you might want to delete them. So that is an example. In for example, what is a periodic logs is nothing but if some applications are generating logs, uh, some application is generating some logs in the while the application is being used in the system. So these logs has to be kept for the future uses. So what is the future use? So someone is coming and asking, some client is coming and asking you, this application has stopped working and something has been done on this application, and who has did this. So when someone asks like that, we can go and check the logs of those applications that are running inside, to check those logs. These logs has to be stored in S3. So in S3, so it will be used in the future for checking the logs, or for root cause, to check the root cause of some issues that has happened. So like this, if you're uploading periodic logs to your bucket, your application might need these logs for a week or a month after creation. So if the logs are generated, these logs will be moved to S3, and these logs will remain in S3 for a week or a month or even a year. It depends on the client's requirements, till when the log has to be retained in S3. So after that, you might want to delete them. So for 1 month, it can be retained, or for even for 1 year, or after the usage of the log is over, we can go and delete them. So we can set the policies as this logs has to be remained in S3 for a week. So the logs will be kept in S3, that is the S3 storage. That is the S3. Then after that, after 1 month or 2 months, depending on your policy, that data will be moved to standard infrequently accessed. So what is that infrequently accessed? The money that you are billed for frequently accessed and infrequently accessed. So if you move data to infrequently accessed after 2 months, then the money spent for those data logs will be less compared to the money spent for data logs that are being stored in standard access. So and after some time, these standard access from infrequently access, you can using a policy, you can move that data or the logs to a glacier. And after the glacier, even after 1 year, if the data is being not used or the data is only waste to be stored, then we can make that to delete it without any human intervention. We can delete that using those policies. So some documents are frequently accessed for a limited period of time. As I said, some logs or some documents are accessed for a limited period of time. And after that, these documents are less frequently accessed. So after for some period of time, for example, for 1 month, these logs will be accessed more frequently. After that, these documents are less frequently accessed. So when the documents are accessed more frequently, we can keep those documents or the data inside a standard S3 or a standard frequently accessed or a standard frequently accessed storage S3. After that, these documents are less frequently accessed. So over time, you might not need real-time access of these objects, but your organization or regulations might require you to archive them for longer period and then optionally delete them later. So what they are saying here is, so some documents in a company, they want some documents to be accessed for a month. So what they are doing is they are they are keeping those documents for a month, for a limited period of time, and they are frequently accessing those documents, and they're frequently accessing those documents. And after a small period of time, what they are doing is they're moving the frequently accessed data. They're thinking that this frequently accessed data is no more frequently accessed, and we can move that frequently accessed data to the next cycle or the next standard class. So they're moving it to the infrequently accessed data to lesser their amount spent on that data, as that data is least bothered compared to the this month's data. So they are moving that data to standard infrequently accessed storage. So then they're keeping it for some period of time, but due to the organization regulations, they cannot go directly and delete the data. So what they are doing is they're asking AWS to keep the data in a safer place till they want the data to delete it. So what the AWS is doing, it's completely taking those data that are not ever that are not even accessed by the user, and they are archiving it for a longer period of time till when the client says. For example, if the client wants them to access those data after 5 years or after 6 years, till that period of time, longer period of time, the AWS can, for example, I'm saying, the AWS can maintain those data that kept in archive, and they can retrieve it if the data is wanted by the client. So they're moving it to the Amazon Glacier. So they are not accessing this data. This data is kept in the rest, and it is archived in the Amazon Glacier, so that if the client wants after some time, they can go and delete it, or if they want it, they can retrieve the data. So you might also upload some types of data to Amazon S3 primarily for archival purposes. For example, digital media archives. What is the digital media archives? Is nothing that films that have been shooted up a long back and they have been released long back. For example, very older films can be stored in these archives, and if you want to review, or if you want to see the older films, you can retrieve those films from the archives. And financial and healthcare records, even the healthcare records. So even in medical purpose, this is used. What is this healthcare record? Is nothing but, if you're going to a hospital nowadays, every hospital is being digitalized, and all your data and all your reports are stored in documents. For example, a PPT or a PDF or a Word document or something like that. So these records can be stored inside S3 or the Glacier. It depends upon, for example, if some people, or if you're going to a hospital for some purpose, for dental checkup or something like that. The very first day, for the doctor has planned for a 1 week of dental checkup, and 1 week and the sittings, maybe 2 or 3 sittings, you have to come for the dental checkup, the doctor said. So for the first week, when your data is created, or when your data is created inside the S3, this data has to be accessed for 1 week. So that will be stored in Amazon frequently accessed storage. So that will be stored in Amazon frequently accessed storage. So what this storage will do is, when the client wants to access will have the data of the patient who has started their medication in their hospital now, who has started their medication in the hospital from today. That's what I am trying to say. From today, so the data will be accessed for 1 week. So this data has to be kept in Amazon S3 standard frequent access storage. So if the patient comes continuously for this 1 week, the data will be continuously accessed. So after 1 week, the doctor asks that patient to come to hospital once in a month. So what the people in the hospital will try to do is they will try to move the data from Amazon frequently accessed to infrequently accessed data. So only this data will be accessed once in a month. After 2 months, for example, if the patient starting his medication at January 1st week, so what this doctor is saying, okay, you have to come for this whole week, January 1st week. So in that particular week, data has been accessed frequently, and data has been accessed multiple n number of times inside the hospital. So the data is kept in Amazon frequently accessed or Amazon standard. So after the January 1st week, the doctor is asking the patient to come in February, first week of February. After the checkup has to be done in second week of March, and after that the checkup has to be done in third week of April. So now the data is the priority of the data is keep on decreasing, so they can move the data from frequently accessed to infrequently accessed. So only once in a month this data is accessed. So what they are doing is they are moving the data from one frequently accessed to infrequently accessed storage. So after that what they are doing is they are keeping the data. So whenever the patient comes till April, they are accessing the data. Then after April, the doctor is saying that no more the patient needs to come to hospital. Then the patient is fine and he can use the medication that is given by him, and he can stay at home, he say. So now the data is becoming infrequently accessed, and it is no more accessed by the hospital. So what the hospital is doing is they are moving the data, that data to a glacier. So they're moving the data to a glacier where the data is no more accessed. So according to the clients, they are changing the data from a frequently to a non-frequently accessed, and they are moving the data to an archived one. So like this, the data life cycle works here inside the hospital. So that's what they are saying here. You might also upload some types of data to Amazon S3 primarily for archival purpose. For example, digital media archives, financial and healthcare records, raw genomics sequence data. Genomics sequence data is nothing that deals with genetics, that are DNA or long-term based data backups and data that must be retained for regulatory complaints. The data that has to be retained for regulatory complaints also can be stored here. So these are the things. And how do I configure a lifecycle? A lifecycle configuration and XML file. So this will be done in an XML file. Comprises a set of permanent guys. So a lifecycle configuration and XML file comprises a set of rules with predefined actions that you want Amazon S3 to perform on objects during their lifetime. So this is an XML file comprises a set of rules. So as I said, a set of rules with predefined action that you want Amazon S3 to perform on objects during their whole life cycle. And the Amazon S3 provides a set of API operations that you use to manage lifecycle configuration on the bucket. API is nothing but an API operation. It's an automatic or a programming operation that you use to manage the lifecycle configuration on a bucket. So Amazon S3 stores the configuration file as a lifecycle subsource that is attached to your bucket. Example, your lifecycle can be a put bucket lifecycle, get bucket lifecycle, and a delete bucket lifecycle. Nothing, as the name indicates, the put bucket lifecycle is putting the data inside the bucket, and get bucket lifecycle is receiving the data, and delete bucket lifecycle is deleting the data from the bucket. So here I'm going to display you a video and on how to configure a lifecycle management policy inside S3. So that's what the guys how to configure lifecycle management S3 packet. That's what he was explaining for us. And he said that how to create a lifecycle management policy and how to manage all those things. So what are the we are going to see what are the benefits of lifecycle management policies. So if Amazon is giving you a service, so for sure they'll be having benefits because Amazon is not a conventional data center that has to be maintained by giving a lot of costs and a lot of money. It is services that are provided by Amazon is totally different from the data centers that has been provisioned. So lifecycle management provides ability to automatically move objects to a cheaper storage or to store objects permanently in a glacier when these are no longer required based on time criteria. So lifecycle management provides the ability to automatically move the objects to a cheaper storage. For example, if you are keeping an object in S3 standard frequently access, you can move the data to the rest of the storage. Or if you don't want the data to be frequently accessed, you can move the data to a cheaper storage. For example, the Amazon infrequently access to frequently access or standard system. Then the Amazon Glacier is the cheapest of all, as the data is not accessed there. The data is only archived. There are different things between accessing and archiving. Archiving is different and accessing is different. So we can archive those data in the Glacier when these are no longer required based on time criteria. For example, certain types of files can only be important and processed during the initial creation of the files, and after a while are no longer required and archived only. As I gave an example of, if you are using a hospital, you are going to a dental hospital, the doctor has asked you for come for a week for a continuous diagnosis. So you are going to the hospital continuously for 1 week. At that time, the data that you have given to the hospital is very important for them. So they'll keep the data in a way that the data is frequently accessed. So it is stored in S3 standard access. But once the data or the patient is asked by the doctor to come once in a month, then the data becomes infrequently accessed and a standard one. So the data is no longer frequently accessed, so it can be stored in Amazon S3 infrequently accessed. So after that, if the patient is completely out of the hospital and he is no longer coming to the hospital, only the medication he is taking from the home, so his data is not ever accessed by. So data can be kept and it is archived in Amazon Glacier. In Amazon Glacier. So that's what it happens here. So another scenario could be to store the log files. To store the log files from different operations and performing analysis on these log files initially, and after a while these can be archived or deleted. So once the files are archived, so it can be moved and it can be deleted in case if you don't want the files to be retained inside the data center or inside the S3 services. So these are the benefits of lifecycle management policies. Then today we are going to see the basics of versioning in S3. So versioning is a means of keeping multiple variants of an object in same bucket. So for example, if you are keeping a Word document or a PDF or an Excel sheet inside S3, you can keep a multiple variants or the multiple versions of the same document. You can use versioning to preserve, retrieve, and restore every version of every object stored in your Amazon S3 bucket. So what is that every version is nothing but, for example, today you're saving a file named as S3. The file contains ABC 3 characters. So you're storing the file, yeah, as a Word document inside S3. So tomorrow, if you are updating the file and you are keeping the versioning policy, if you are updating the file as after ABC line, you are updating it as DEF. Okay, so this line gets updated and the previous version also will be preserved, and this version will also be the version which has single line ABC will also be kept, and the second version which the lines DEF with ABC is also be kept. So this is the basics of versioning. So what is versioning is nothing but with versioning you can easily recover from both unintended user actions and application failures. If multiple users are accessing a file and one user is creating a line ABC and the second user is creating a line DEF. So if the versioning is enabled, both the versions are preserved, and without the changes the file has been kept with only the single line ABC, and with the changes with the file DEF is also kept. So in one bucket, for example, if you have two objects with the same key but different version, such as the photo GF version 11111 and photo JF version 121212. So different versions of the two objects with the same key but different version IDs. So versioning enabled buckets enable you to recover objects from accidental deletion or overwrite. For example, if you delete an object, if some user has deleted an object and he has kept in S3, By accidentally, if you are deleting that object, the same versions, instead of removing it permanently, Amazon S3 inserts a delete marker which becomes current object version. You can always restore the previous version. So if you are trying to delete it, the Amazon S3 inserts a delete marker. So it will insert a delete marker and it will keep it. So if you want, if some other person who has created the file, he wants to retrieve it, he can retrieve, he can always restore the previous version. And if you overwrite an object, it results in a new object version in the bucket. You can always restore the previous version. Even if you delete or if you overwrite also, a old version will be stored in, and the new version also will be the overrated version also will be there, and the old version will also will be there in the bucket. So you can always restore the previous version, and if you want, you can keep the new previous version, or you can delete it. If you delete it, then delete marker will be inserted. So double time, if you delete it, delete marker will be inserted, and after that the person was getting the file, if he comes and sees it, he can restore that file without the delete marker, without disabling the delete marker. So this is the function of versioning. We are going to see versioning briefly in the next session.